Hey there guys, alright, today we are watching a video that I saw show up on my recommended feed, and so I thought we'd give it a shot. These are the greatest recorded speeches in American history from 1933 to 2008. And so what we're going to, well, first off, this video will likely be copyrighted, as most speeches, political speeches, seem to be copyrighted and not open, like, free access, which I kind of think is a little weird, but whatever. Like, political speeches should be just free use, because political figures are, public figures. But whatever. Anyways, so this video is likely going to be copyrighted by whoever owns these various speeches or whatnot. So please do go check out my other videos. Specifically, you want to watch videos of me yapping. I would recommend the Trope Talk series. That is where I most consistently yap. I have some other videos here and there. Some videos on, like, Anglo-Saxon England, medieval English history I can yap a bit about, as that was my field of my primary field of study when I was getting my bachelor's degree. So please do go check those out. Yeah, I think what we'll also do is, I think it'd be fun to, as we go along, rank these speeches in American history and see whether or not, and I know these are in chronological order, not in the creators, ranking of them, but I'm gonna rank them because I can. So, if you disagree, agree with me on my ranking at the end of this video, please leave a comment and tell me why you disagree, if you disagree. And if you agree, I don't know, thumbs up. You're awesome. Let's in.
So first of all,
Fear itself.
let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror, which paralyzes needed efforts to convert retreat.
So this speech, I know we still got time, but really the hook of the speech has already been said. The most memorable part of the speech. I think out of the most, there are pretty much two speeches in which FDR is remembered for. Fear Itself and December 7th, the day that forever will live in infamy. Obviously, the day that will forever live in infamy is perhaps the most, I would argue, the better one. I don't know. There's just something about that speech that feels really, really strong to me. Fear Itself, maybe it's just because Fear Itself I've heard the most. It's one that is quoted so often because it's one that can be applied in generality, in broader circumstances. Whereas, right, December 7th, the day that forever will live in infamy, is a very specific moment. So it has a very narrow focus. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Great quote, but also a tad bit overplayed by now in history. But anyways.
Yesterday.
Oh. Yeah, we don't get the full speeches. We're getting little bits. But it looks like we're getting longer speeches anyways.
December 7th, 1941. You know? A short
It's a speech, man. It's a good speech. I really
time ago, an American airplane dropped one bomb on Hiroshima and destroyed its usefulness to the enemy. That bomb has more power than 20,000 tons of TNT. The Japanese began the war from the air at Pearl Harbor. They have been repaid many-fold, and the end is not yet. With this bomb, we have now added a new and revolutionary increase in destruction. to supplement the growing power of our armed forces.
Okay. That one, I think out of the three so far, the bombing of Hiroshima is the weakest one. There's not much. I think he could have made it stronger by saying, right, he had a chance. Whoever wrote the speech, whether it was Truman or maybe a speechwriter, I don't know. They had a chance there to really actually have a really good line. Um, the Japanese started this war in the air. America is ending it by the air. Something like that. Something along those lines. Obviously, this is coming off the top of my head. There's probably a better way of phrasing it than what I just said, but yeah, I think they could have been better. Could have been better. There's no line in that speech there that you can just sink your teeth into and put up on a poster, you know?
We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
Oh, Eisenhower. This is giving the vibes of Joe Biden's farewell speech of American people. It is your responsibility. Fight the oligarchy or resist or whatever the fuck Biden said. It's like, my man, you were president. You were the one in the most blatant position of power to do something. And Eisenhower, you were our top general in World War II. You were president throughout the 50s, the majority of the 50s. You could have, yeah, and you were essentially the president of McCarthyism. The military-industrial complex is partially, I'm not gonna put full blame on him, but the military-industrial complex that he is warning about largely started taking steam. Now, it started really taking steam in World War II, right? And once it really started going, the USA couldn't really let that go, especially with the Cold War going. And so it continued. So it didn't start under Eisenhower, but I think the argument could be made that it really cemented itself into the American culture, political thing through Eisenhower's presidency. And so, you know, yeah.
The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes.
I do not believe that any of us would exchange places with any other people or any other generation. The energy, the faith, the devotion which we bring to this endeavor will light our country and all who serve it. And the glow from that fire can truly light the world. And so, my fellow Americans, ask not
There it is.
what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
There's that line. Okay, so I think right now, my ranking number one is Day That Will Live in Infamy, JFK, Fear itself, and then Hiroshima, Eisenhower. Is in terms of greatest to worst thus far.
My fellow citizens of the world, ask not what America will do for you, but what together we can do for the freedom of man. And there are even a few who say that it's true that communism is an evil system, but it permits us to make economic progress. Lass sie nach Berlin kommen. Let them come. All free men, wherever they may live, are citizens of Berlin.
This one,
And therefore,
I think this is another one that is very, I don't know. I find this one to be pretty overused. I've just heard it so many times. I'm just kind of like, I don't know, the strength of the moment for me as someone not living. Like, I'm getting kind of, right? This is kind of opposite of JFK speeches are opposite for me in regards to like FDR's speeches, right? In FDR's case, I really liked the speech that was very much a speech, a specific speech for the moment, for the time in which they were living, the day in infamy or whatever. And then I'm not too much a fan of Fear Itself, which again was a speech given in the context of the Great Depression, but it is also a line that can be applied to broader circumstance throughout history, throughout American history post that speech. Here, right, Ich bin ein Berliner, I butchered that, Ich bin ein Berliner, is very much a moment, a Cold War moment, and ask not what you can do for yourself or whatever. Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. That I find that one to be stronger when it's with that less specific speech as opposed to this more specific speech. I don't really know why that is. Anyways,
as a free man, I take pride in the words, Ich bin ein Berliner.
oh, here we go.
I have a dream
I mean, come on.
that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will
This is just easily probably top 5, top 3 human speeches in all of human history.
not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. Let freedom ring, and when this happens, when we allow freedom to ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Number 1. Like, duh.
There is no constitutional issue here.
Ooh, an LBJ speech. I don't think I've heard his here.
The command of the Constitution is plain. There is no moral issue. It is wrong, deadly wrong, to deny any of your fellow Americans the right to vote in this country.
Yeah, that one's kind of weak. That one's gonna be at the bottom. There's just no oomph to that speech. Like, the message, of course, good. But, right, when it comes to making a great speech, you gotta have some more power to it. And LBJ, I don't know why I want to say LGB. LBJ, not much oomph there.
To know war is to know that there is still madness in this world. There are poor to be lifted up, and there are cities to be built, and there's a world to be helped. Yet, we do what we must. I am hopeful, and I will try with best I can with everything I've got to end this battle and to return our sons to their desires. Yet, as long as others will challenge America's security and test the dearness of our beliefs with fire and steel, then we must stand or see the promise of 2 centuries crumble.
I definitely think LBJ's speeches here are the weakest so far. I mean, the Vietnam one I think is a bit better than his speech on the Voting Rights Act, which, right, it was the Voting Rights Act? Voting Rights speech. But it gets into, right, this is a problem also that shows, and it eventually shows its head with Iraq and the continued involvement in Afghanistan post Osama's death. Which will harm Obama's legacy a bit. You are saying that American security is threatened, but because it is dragging on so long, there's just, and the amount of troops, right? We did not pour this many troops into Korea. And Korea had more global involvement, whereas Vietnam was very largely, Vietnam ends up becoming what we see later down the line in Iraq and Afghanistan in the 2000s, where it's global. UN is kind of involved, or well, American NATO allies are involved, but really America is the predominant force. And I mean, that was the same in Korea, but it was more evenly spread, I feel like, in the Korean War. Like, the amount of American involvement in Vietnam is just, with the amount that you are putting into Vietnam here, you are not then showing the American people an equal amount of why is this needed? Why is so much effort needed here? How is our security threatened in such a way to require this sort of involvement and a draft? There's the disconnect, right? And we see this in Iraq with the amount of soldiers that go to Iraq. One, Iraq wasn't involved in 9/11. And so the justification to invade was very flimsy. And so, yeah, and then as it dragged on, it's like, why are we still here? Why are we still here? We got rid of Saddam pretty quickly. Why are we still here? And then Afghanistan. Afghanistan was more supported because we were directly attacked by Osama bin Laden, who was believed to be in Afghanistan. Now, of course, he would end up being killed in Pakistan by U.S. Navy SEALs. But, right, there was more, like, but once Osama was gone, pretty much support for staying in Afghanistan, I mean, it was already shrinking before Osama died. Once he was gone, really the reason to stay was kind of like, we got our revenge. We got the man that planned it, right? It's really what we kind of cared about. Ultimately, Americans, fortunately, we don't care about establishing stable governments in other parts of the world. We don't really care that much, even on the left, even the liberal side of American politics, don't care, right? Liberal Democratic voters don't give a shit about that either, right? They're just like, all right, we got our revenge, let's get out, right? Like, prolonged war is not popular in America. So, yeah. Anyways.
all we say to America is be true to what you said on paper.
Number 2. This is the number 2.
But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest far right.
God, we really... I'm waiting for someone. We need another great orator in modern America. But we don't have one. No one has shown up. No one has given the speeches. No one has led the protests. Where are they? Where's our great orator of the 21st century that is not Obama? Because Obama is just a liberal. He is not a leftist. Unlike Martin Luther King, who was a leftist, who was very progressive, not just in civil rights, but also in anti-capitalistic speech. He pointed to capitalism as a predominant problem for what is essentially... But of course they are excluding those parts of his rhetoric from his popular speeches. Wonder why. Anyways.
And so just as I say we aren't going to let any dogs or water hoses turn us around,
I love it.
We aren't going to let any injunction turn us around.
I don't know what it is. It's probably a combination of everything that makes him such a great speaker, right? It's never, like, when someone's truly great at, like, leadership, speech giving, whatever, usually it is because they are masters of multiple things, multiple aspects of the craft, right? The writing of Martin Luther King Jr.'s speeches, top tier. His inflection, the way in which the cadence, the pacing, he is, like, a speech is a story. He is essentially a master storyteller. Like, that's yes.
Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land.
I love his speeches.
So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
I have some very sad news for all of you. And
Oh,
I think,
an RFK speech. Okay.
sad news for all of our fellow citizens and people who love peace all over the world. And that is that Martin Luther King was shot and was killed tonight in Memphis, Tennessee. Martin Luther King dedicated his life to love and to justice between fellow human beings. He died in the cause of that effort. For those of you who are black and are tempted to be filled with hatred and mistrust of the injustice of such an act against all white people, I would only say that I can also feel in my own heart the same kind of feeling.
This is not a good speech. There's his delivery sucks.
I had a member of my family killed, but he was killed by a white man. But we have to make an effort in the United States. We have to make an effort to understand, to get beyond or go beyond these rather difficult times. My favorite poem, my favorite poet was Aeschylus, and he once wrote, "Even in our sleep, pain which cannot forget falls drop by drop upon the heart, until in our own despair, against our will, comes wisdom through the awful grace of God." What we need in the United States is not division. What we need in the United States is not hatred. What we need in the United States is not violence and lawlessness, but is love and wisdom and compassion toward one another, feeling of justice toward those who still suffer within our country, whether they be white or whether they be black.
Yeah, that might be the. Ooh, I don't know if I would have that one lower than LBJ's speeches, but it's definitely towards the bottom. There's just. Now, my guess here is that this speech by RFK was a very hastily crafted speech to likely capitalize on the moment and grab a movement of unity to help propel him in the polls. And so, right, again, being pretty cynical regarding RFK here, because he was not a champion of equal rights, like in the early 60s, but he eventually became a champion of it. Whether or not those were genuine feelings, a genuine change, I cannot say, right? I'm always a little bit more cynical in that regard when it comes to politicians and their shifting of stances like that, especially on stances like equal rights. I'm a little bit more skeptical as to their why. Now, of course, it is ultimately probably a net good that even if they are doing it for the purposes of attaining political station and popularity, is the only reason why they are now backing equal rights. That is probably still a net good, even if they are using it for personal gain. They're at the very least, it is still progressing in some means, right? But still a little bit cynical on RFK here on this. But also, this is just a weak speech. There was no, I don't know. And I mean, how do you give this speech to a crowd of people as a white man, right? Like, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know how I would give this speech, but it was a very ill-passioned speech. There was no real passion to it. There was no building of momentum here. But again, of course, you don't want to also, like, I don't know. I feel like this speech, I wouldn't have included this on a list of greatest recorded speeches just because there's no singular line here that is necessarily memorable. What is most memorable about this speech is nothing that really RFK says, aside from him announcing the death of MLK and then the gasps from the crowd. That is the moment from this speech that is memorable. Nothing that RFK actually says, which to me then makes it a bad speech.
Throughout the long and difficult period of Watergate, I have felt it was my duty to persevere, to make every possible effort to complete the term of office to which you elected me. In the past few days, however, it has become evident to me that I no longer have a strong enough political base in the Congress to justify continuing that effort. Therefore, I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow. Vice President Ford will be sworn in as president at that hour in this office.
I think, okay, Watergate I would consider also a good speech. I don't know if it cracks top 5 amongst the list here, but I think it's a good speech, and it especially demonstrates right? He did something very corrupt and he was caught. But he is still, right, conceding. He is like, he could have stayed president. Would he have gotten impeached and kicked out? Likely. But what he ended up doing is conceding the power and be like, okay, yep, here. I've lost your support. I've lost your faith. I will resign peacefully myself without Congress needing to what is a part of their congressional duty, right? He is taking it from Congress's hands and not saying, you don't need to do this. You don't need to go through the legalities of kicking me out. I will make the personal decision here of I have failed the American people. I have failed the elected officials, and I shall resign, right? That is what is good about this speech. Not necessarily its delivery or the way in which it was written, but essentially the meaning behind it and what it means for someone sitting in the seat of president. Of course, we will never get probably another Watergate speech from that side of the aisle in American politics. But it was nice when it happened.
It is a day for mourning and remembering.
Oh, no, President Carter speeches. Okay. I feel like Carter would have had at least one.
Nancy and I are pained to the core by the tragedy of the Shuttle Challenger. We know we share this pain with all of the people of our country. This is truly a national loss. We've never had a tragedy like this. And perhaps...
God, he looks so old.
We've forgotten the courage it took for the crew of the shuttle. But they, the Challenger 7, were aware of the dangers, but overcame them and did their jobs brilliantly. We mourn 7 heroes. And I want to say something to the school children of America who were watching the live coverage of the shuttle's takeoff. I know it's hard to understand, but sometimes painful things like this happen. It's all part of the process of exploration and discovery.
There's the good part.
It's all part of taking a chance and expanding man's horizons. The future doesn't belong to the faint-hearted. It belongs to the brave. The Challenger crew was pulling us into the future, and we'll continue to follow them.
If only Republicans supported NASA like they used to. Well, whether or not the Reagan administration supported NASA is debatable, right? But certainly more so than modern 21st century Republicans. But I definitely think y'all know my feelings on Reagan. Y'all know I fucking hate his guts. But this speech, this moment, specifically the end where he talks to the children of America, is a great moment. And I think it is both. It is managing to bring a little light of hope amidst a very tragic situation, right? In that, talking to the school children specifically there and talking about how in the pursuit of exploration, these things can happen. They were brave, right? That's good. That's good.
There is one sign the Soviets can make that would be unmistakable, that would advance dramatically the cause of freedom and peace.
He looks... Why does he look so much older here than he does here?
That would advance dramatically...
I'm sure probably makeup.
Dramatically the cause of freedom and peace. General Secretary Gorbachev, if you seek peace, if you seek prosperity for the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe, if you seek liberalization, come here to this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, open this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
I definitely think the delivery could have been a bit better. Like, I think in a better orator. Like, imagine if this speech had been given by, like, someone with the skills of, like, MLK or Obama. There would have been momentum to that moment. I mean, there was a building momentum in the speech itself to tear down this wall. But in Reagan's delivery of it, I think it could have been better. I mean, still a good speech. It's definitely memorable, but I think it's also one of those speeches that I think gets quoted too much, and I'm sick of hearing it. I've heard it too much. But good speech. I don't think it's as good as his Challenger speech.
Just 2 hours ago, Allied air forces began an attack on military targets in Iraq and Kuwait. These attacks continue as I speak. Ground forces are not engaged. This conflict started August 2nd when the dictator of Iraq invaded a small and helpless neighbor. Kuwait, a member of the Arab League and a member of the United Nations, was crushed, its people brutalized. 5 months ago, Saddam Hussein started this cruel war against Kuwait. Tonight, the battle has been joined.
Mr. Speaker. I think Bush Sr. probably had better speeches than that one. Oh, and now we're just skipping straight to 2000 State of the Union? Oh, Clinton had better speeches than that before. Well, I mean, I'm sure. Well, let's hear how good the speech is.
Speaker, Mr. Vice President, members of Congress, honored guests, my fellow Americans. We are fortunate to be alive at this moment in history. Never before has our nation enjoyed at once so much prosperity and social progress with so little internal crisis and so few external threats. Never before have we had such a blessed opportunity and therefore such a profound obligation to build the more perfect union of our founders' dreams. We began the new century with over 20 million new jobs, the fastest economic growth in more than 30 years, the lowest unemployment rates in 30 years, the lowest poverty rates in 20 years, the lowest African American and Hispanic unemployment rates on record, the first back-to-back surpluses in 42 years, and next month America will achieve the longest period of economic growth in our entire history.
How Al Gore lost 2000 will forever piss me off. Like, right? Clinton coming off here strong 8 years as president. Al Gore as his VP. Al Gore should have challenged Florida just a bit. He should have put a stronger challenge. Now, yes, I understand that would have harmed bipartisanship. I don't care. I think Al Gore should have won 2000. I think he did win 2000. I think something went wrong there that maybe right the margin of victory was so tiny that I think it needed more scrutiny. Just a little bit more. Just for certainty. But eventually it was just left to be voted on. Oh, here we are.
Good evening. Just moments ago, I spoke with George W. Bush and congratulated him on becoming the 43rd president of the United States.
And also what I do not like here, right? The Supreme Court made the decision of this election, but it was on party lines, right? If this had been a unanimous Supreme Court decision, then I would have less issue with it. But the Supreme Court decided, based purely on the Republican members who outnumbered the Democratic members, right? By just one member. There was one more Republican chosen Supreme Court member that was the deciding factor here. That does not give confidence to me, right? When things are decided like that, where it's very clearly along party lines. I do not believe the Supreme Court should have been the ones making the deciding factor on the 2000 election. Now, ultimately, what should have been done is a little bit harder to say, as I am not an expert in this topic. But maybe Congress, but of course Congress at the time of 2000 was, I don't know what the congressional split was, whether or not it was a democratically dominated thing or not. Right? I don't know. Just the solution to such a narrow race is a very hard thing, right? Like I cannot say what the right solution would have been that would have been better than what we ended up doing. And I think maybe Al Gore recognized that as well, and perhaps that is why he conceded the way he did. Though, of course, there's no real challenging the Supreme Court. Once the Supreme Court makes the decision, that is the decision, unfortunately.
And I promised him that I wouldn't call him back this time. Now the U.S. Supreme Court has spoken. Let there be no doubt. While I strongly disagree with the court's decision, I accept it. I accept the finality of this outcome, which will be ratified next Monday in the Electoral College. And tonight, for the sake of our unity as a people and the strength of our democracy, I offer my concession.
I think it's a good speech. I don't think it's necessarily a great one. Like, I think it's a really good speech. I think in terms of its importance to the American system, I think it is stronger than, I think it definitely beats Reagan's speeches. I think it's a little bit better than Watergate.
The workers who work here, for the families who mourn, this nation stands with the good people of New York City and New Jersey and Connecticut as we mourn the loss of thousands of our citizens. I can hear you. I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you. And the people who knock these buildings down will hear all of us soon.
I mean, the speech, it's... Any competent person would have been able to give a speech that is remembered following 9/11, right? That moment ain't hard to capitalize on with a political speech, and boost popularity. We're skipping his 2004 speech? Y'all, come on. Like, the election speech is a fantastic speech, but also the speech that shot him to stardom in the 2004 DNC, easily also one of the best speeches in American history.
And all those watching tonight from beyond our shores, from parliaments and palaces, to those who are huddled around radios in the forgotten corners of the world, our stories are singular, but our destiny is shared. And a new dawn of American leadership is at hand. To those who would tear the world down, we will defeat you. To those who seek peace and security, we support you. And to all those who have wondered if America's beacon still burns as bright, tonight we proved once more that the true strength of our nation comes not from the might of our arms or the scale of our wealth, but from the enduring power of our ideals: democracy, liberty, opportunity, and unyielding hope. That's the true genius of America, that America can change. Our union can be perfected. And what we've already achieved gives us hope for what we can and must achieve tomorrow. This election had many firsts and many stories that will be told for generations, but one that's on my mind tonight is about a woman who cast her ballot in Atlanta. She is a lot like the millions of others who stood in line to make their voice heard in this election.
And see, this is the strength of Obama's speeches and his charisma. He is able to narrow it down to the individual level and make it seem like he is talking to you and understands you. I think Obama as an orator, I think I've got to put him above FDR. I think this is number 3. On this list, I think this is number 3. Just because he just has a way of sucking you in and making you listen.
Election, except for one thing. Ann Nixon Cooper is 106 years old. She was born just a generation past slavery, a time when there were no cars on the road or planes in the sky, when someone like her couldn't vote for 2 reasons: because she was a woman and because of the color of her skin. And tonight, I think about all that she's seen throughout her century in America: the heartache and the hope, the struggle and the progress, the times we were told that we can't, and the people who pressed on with that American creed: yes, we can. At a time when women's voices were silenced and their hopes dismissed, she lived to see them stand up and speak out and reach for the ballot: yes, we can. When there was despair in the Dust Bowl and depression across the land, she saw a nation conquer fear itself with a New Deal, new jobs, a new sense.
Oh, and that's a good... See, those bits, he is referencing older speeches. Conquer fear itself. Master.
Of common purpose. Yes, we can. When the bombs fell on our harbor and tyranny threatened the world, she was there to witness a generation rise to greatness, and a democracy was saved. Yes, we can. She was there for the buses in Montgomery, the hoses in Birmingham,
the building, the momentum of the speech.
And a preacher from Atlanta who told the people that we shall overcome. Yes, we can. A man touched down on the moon. A wall came down in Berlin. A world was connected by our own science and imagination. And this year, in this election, she touched her finger to a screen and cast her vote. Because after 106 years in America, through the best of times and the darkest of hours, she knows how America can change. Yes, we can. America, we have come so far. We have seen so much, but there's so much more to do. So tonight, let us ask ourselves, if our children should live to see the next century, if my daughters should be so lucky to live as long as Ann Nixon Cooper, what change will they see? What progress will we have made? This is our chance to answer that call. This is our moment. This is our time to put our people back to work and open doors of opportunity for our kids, to restore prosperity and promote the cause of peace, to reclaim the American dream and reaffirm that fundamental truth that out of many we are one, that while we breathe, we hope, and where we are met with cynicism and doubt and those who tell us that we can't, we will respond with that timeless creed that sums up the spirit of a people.
And there's the moment.
Yes, we can. Thank you. God bless you. And may God bless the United States of America.
I definitely think his 2004 speech is better. Like, this is a really good speech, of course. But I think his 2004 speech is better just because it's just... There's something about the 04 speech that is just perfect. This isn't as... I don't know, it doesn't feel as impassioned. But also, if we want to extend this timeline to beyond 2008 up to the modern day, I would also put in Joe Biden's speech from 2016 or 2018. I think it was 2016 at the DNC. Is America is second to none. Fucking eagle screech. Such a good speech. That one I would put up there as well. So I think a couple speeches that are missing. I think Carter probably had one speech that should be listed among here. Though again, I'm not too sure because I don't know Carter's speeches well enough to say for certainty. I think LBJ's speeches could have been kicked out of here. They weren't really that great. I would have liked to. I think this speech, Obama's election night speech, does deserve to be here. But I also think his 04 speech should be up here as well. and then extend it to 2016 and add in Joe Biden's speech. I think is one of the great one is another speech that will be well remembered. But aside from that, I don't think and maybe also 2011 Obama speech on getting Osama. Maybe that could be up there too. I don't know. Oh, that one I don't think is all. I do remember that speech just because I remember being in 6th grade and we watched it. Like, growing up post, like, right, I was born before 9/11, but really the majority of my life has been lived post 9/11, right? Living in that world where the United States has pretty much entirely been at war. Finally getting that man that had that pretty much pivotal moment in American history. That is, right, that was a moment. That was certainly a memorable moment, and I think also could be counted among here. This video, I yapped a lot for, so let me know your thoughts. I think our top 3 are probably the 2 MLK speeches and then Obama here at number 3. Number 4, probably, again, FDR's, Day That'll Live in Infamy speech. Number 5, I think I'll give it to JFK's inauguration. Number 6, back to FDR for his Fear Itself. And then the others could really be, probably are interchangeable depending on my mood. But yeah, I enjoyed this video. I hope you guys did as well. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe for more. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.